Hey friends, welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas.
And I'm Melissa Trevathan.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in. We are delighted to share time with you. We've been dreaming about this conversation for quite some time. Grateful you said yes. Thankful for how our paths have intersected, and would love to just start out by having you talk a little bit about your family and the work you do.
Yeah, I am so thrilled. I've just been grinning all morning because, again, we have so many overlaps in our work and in the people we know. So it's great to just have this time with you. I'm a therapist. I specialize in bringing together religion and psychology, Christianity in particular, Christian faith practices with psychology. That's what I love to do. I am a teacher at heart. So while I practice as a therapist, I love just creating resources and tools and teaching. So I do a lot of that through a podcast, my own podcast called the Best of You Podcast, which
we
I
love
having you on, Sissy. Yeah.
Yes.
And my family is, my husband and I, we split time between Boston and Wyoming, which are really different places, but we love both so much. Our daughter's graduating from college this May, and our son is getting married in June. So lots of major life transitions.
Y'all are in very similar spaces.
We are. I have a daughter who just got engaged and sons who are juniors in college. Yes, I can't believe that.
It's a
lot
fun
of launching.
Time. A lot of launching. I say to people, the quantity of time that goes into parenting is less, but the quality is really, really important.
So true.
Well, so it was fun getting ready to get to ask you questions and to get to do a deeper dive in all the things you do, which we really do love. We're just so grateful. And your website, you talk specifically about combining spiritual wisdom and psychology, which obviously we want to be doing the same thing with the kids and families we work with. Will you talk about that? Will you talk specifically about why you think it's important to connect the two?
Yeah, a lot of that came out of my own story. I grew up in a family that was very focused on faith. I went to Bible camp as a kid, knew a lot about God, knew a lot about the Bible, but arrived at adulthood having very little sense of my own self. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand emotions. I didn't understand a nervous system. I think so many of us, right?
Yes.
And so my story is one where, gosh, I didn't have any sort of crisis of faith. I really had a strong faith, but I didn't have a clue about how to be a human, how to be a self. And so, I just decided to go to school to figure that out and just spent about 6 years. I got a master's in counseling and a PhD in psychology and in religious studies, just trying to figure out the both and of, I want to have a strong, robust sense of the sacred, of the divine, of God. I also want to have a robust understanding of the self. And it's also how I saw other people, just the beauty in others, in the human design. And so I just spent all that time kind of myself. This was before a lot of people were doing it, as I know both of you guys could probably relate totally, right? This wasn't really talked about that much back in the day. The two were completely separate. Psychology over here, if you're a person of faith over here. So it was really hard. I had lots of folks telling me you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't study psychology. You're going to lose your faith. There was a lot of, it's better today, thanks to folks like you and me who are trying to do this work and some of our colleagues, but there's still a little bit of a disjoint. And in my mind, the two go hand in hand. The two just go hand in hand. How can I, understand God if I don't understand the person he made me to be and the person that I come to the table in all my relationships as, with all my wounds and all my brokenness and all the goodness too.
Yeah, so good.
Okay, we want to take a little journey through your amazing body of work. So your first book, Boundaries for Your Soul, is described as, I love this, a faith-infused internal family systems model. We love IFS. And so will you just share one truth from internal family systems you'd want parents to hear?
It is such a powerful model. I think that most life-changing, transformational thing about IFS. So Boundaries for Your Soul really it's really true to the IFS model, and it's really true to a faith orientation. So for folks who've heard about IFS but are like, I don't know what to do with this, we are trying to in the book, we translated it for a Christian audience specifically, who are trying to bring it together with their faith practices. The most life-shattering, there's two, I got to give two. One is that we do not change in the context of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
We change in the context of compassion, and that includes compassion toward ourselves and the parts of ourselves we don't like. Life-changing. And then the second part is I can have a part of me that is anxious. I can have a part of me that is angry. I can have a part of me that is sad, and it's not all of who I am. Two things can be true, right? I can be anxious in this moment, and also I'm okay. I can be angry with my kid and also grounded in the love that I have, right? There's that validation that we are complex creatures who can hold competing realities embedded in the model. And the more I get curious about those different parts of me from a place of curiosity, I wonder why I'm angry. What's that anxiety about? We get a little healthy distance from those parts of us. With compassion, we actually lead ourselves so much better. It's like a little internal family of parts that we're parenting and leading, just like we're trying to lead our external families, the kids in our lives, right? And so It is life-changing. You learn to parent yourself, the parts of yourselves, the way that we all wished we had been parented and the way we long to parent our own children.
Feels like that has never been more important to have a conversation around. Just so grateful.
Yeah. It's really that model at the end of my doctoral program is when I discovered it. And it's just that idea that we can have two things going on at once. And then instead of trying to beat myself out of one of them, which doesn't work and just adds more tension and more pressure inside, to kind of get curious, even that language of, oh, there's a part of me that's really angry. What is that about? And you begin to find that agency to actually lead yourself wisely.
Yes. Well, I feel like we could camp out talking about any of your books for a much longer period of time. But okay, we're going to move to the next book, which was The Best of You, which is also your podcast title. Will you talk a little bit about it and what you hope folks gain from reading that?
Yeah. So The Best of You is, I would say, the baseline, the foundational entry-level book of mine. I wrote it specifically for women because it's out of my own experience. And it's kind of what I said. They're growing up in a faith home, loving parents, knowledge of the Bible and God, no knowledge of self. So what is the self? And having internalized messages that self is bad, having a self is selfish. We are supposed to die to ourselves. We are not supposed to trust ourselves. Emotions are bad, right? These messages that are misconstrued got internalized to essentially this way of living in the world is I should be a doormat. And so my own journey of unpacking those messages, what does that really mean? Selfhood is not selfishness, right? I say that all the time to women. Having a self is actually one of the best things you can bring into your relationships. Selflessness is not always the right choice. And it's not always the choice we see in Jesus. Jesus had a strong sense of self. So there's a lot in the book about recovering a true self, not selfishness, not true self at the expense of loving others, but a self that honors others even as I honor myself. Because both matter to our relationships and both matter to God. I think this is one of the best gifts we can give our daughters in particular, right?
Amen.
Because as women, we even though there's a lot in the book about healthy boundaries, right? That healthy boundaries, as we learn, they really come from a sense of inner strength, core strength. They're not about shutting other people out. They're about really navigating relationships with wisdom and tenacity, which is again what we see in the example of Jesus. Jesus wasn't a doormat. And so it's really my kind of love letter to women who really want to honor God, but have internalized, misconstrued church messages that I don't believe are actually the intent. And so I do a lot of work in the book to unpack some of those verses and those messages that we heard that reveal what I believe is God's intent, which is, we see it in John when Jesus said a seed gets buried in the ground, not to die, but to become more of your true self. That's what it means to follow Jesus. And so it's really a book that I wrote for Christian women who really, again, want to love God, but are tired of feeling kind of like a doormat or like they don't have any agency in their own lives.
Thank you. Yes. My neck is hurting. I'm shaking my head in agreement so much. Those of you who aren't watching this on YouTube, you should see the way we're shaking our heads.
I know. I told you.
Yes. Sissy, I was in 3 cities in Texas last week: Austin, Midland, and Dallas.
How many tacos did you consume across the state of Texas?
Somewhere around 3,000.
How much queso?
Somewhere around 3 gallons.
It's just hard not to in Texas.
For us, it's really impossible.
How many Taco Tuesdays do you think we might have inspired since this podcast launched?
It may be our greatest legacy. Families having Taco Tuesday each week.
Well, if we're going to inspire consuming more tacos, we need to balance that out with reminding folks to take their vitamins.
And thanks to the great folks at Hiya, that is an easier task than ever.
Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk growing kids should never eat.
That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved, super-powered chewable vitamin.
Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste they love.
Formulated with the help of nutritional experts, Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, concentration, teeth, bones, and more. Hiya is designed for kids of all ages and sent straight to your door, so there is one less thing to worry about.
I love that they ship straight to your door. Your first order comes with this fun bottle that kids can decorate with stickers. Henry had a ball decorating his bottle, and he knows exactly where he keeps it at my house.
We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/RBG. This deal is not available on their regular website.
Go to hiyahealth.com/RBG and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults.
Okay, we're so excited about your newest book, I Shouldn't Feel This Way. That is something we hear a lot in our offices from parents and kids too. And so I want to read this. In the description, you've said, do you beat yourself up when what you feel doesn't align with the person you want to be? I Shouldn't Feel This Way is your guide to untangling conflicting emotions, learn to tame false guilt, trade mental chaos for clarity, stop numbing emotions, and make decisions that break cycles of defeat. Change starts when you stop beating yourself up. Thank you for that. Let's break these down. Will you just give parents one tip to tame false guilt? Even talk about what it kind of looks like in the context of parenting.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is guilt is an emotion. It is not a direct line from God. It does not always mean you've done something wrong.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Guilt often means you've done something brave. You've done something uncomfortable. You don't know how to feel about it. And so we default to guilt. So I would say that's a big part. And so once you begin to, that's where the title of the book was from my own inner dialogue. I've learned I shouldn't feel this way, that guilt, almost like an inner gaslighting too, right? An inner, don't feel it. It's not real. I've learned to go, oh, that's a cue that I do feel something. And to, again, not beat myself up for it, but to get curious about it. But guilt is a real red herring often. It is very often not sometimes it means we've done something wrong. A lot of times it means we've done something brave.
Oh, that's a good reminder. Thank you for saying that for my next few days to be thinking about. So what about, I love where you talk about trading mental chaos for clarity. And obviously parents are in the midst of a lot of mental chaos, just life in a lot of ways. But will you talk about what that can look like specifically for our audience too?
Yeah, there are 3 practices in the book. The first one, naming without shame, what we feel, what we notice. The second one I think is the hardest for busy parents. And so I worked really hard. It's the framing. We have to pause to understand it because, I might be angry in the moment. I come home. I use this example in the book. I come home and there's dishes everywhere and the house is a mess. I might be angry. That anger, again, I don't want to shame myself for it, but I also don't want to act out of it. I need to pause and frame the anger. What actually happened here? Have my kids been not picking up around the house for weeks, or was this a one-off that they had a bad day? I need to pause, right? Which takes that core strength. So that framing step, I call it a practice really, because it's something we have to teach ourselves. It's so important. What I want to say to parents about it, because we can't, the third step is brave. Brave is taking the action. So name, brave, but we got to build that pause in. That's the frame step. I think it's probably the most important practice in the book and the hardest for parents because we're in it. We don't have the time. And so I talk a lot about what I call places in between, creating that pause. It could be as simple as taking a deep breath. I'm angry. I'm anxious. It could be as simple as taking a walk around the block. It could be your commute home from work, where you mindfully take a moment to reflect on what you've left behind and what you're pretty sure you're going to be walking into. So I want to say up front, I really tried. These are practices that I think are so important, but I call them practices because we have to practice them. They don't happen magically. We have to practice. But the more you do practice kind of owning and honoring, okay, I feel this thing. I kind of wish I didn't feel, but I do. How can I, today I'm going to take a walk and I'm going to prayerfully, mindfully consider this, which might help me in the moment just not be so intense. Just be a little bit more in command of myself, knowing that I've developed trust with myself. I'm going to give this a minute when I can, and I'm going to circle back to the situation. So I'm really trying to help folks have these practices because emotions are coming at us all day long. Circumstances are coming at us all day long. This is part of that becoming a human that we weren't, our generation was not taught. We're trying to teach our kids how to do this work, but we're in real time trying to learn it ourselves.
Yes.
How do I kind of be with my emotions throughout the day in a way that's practical and sustainable? And I kind of liken it to learning to ride a bike. At first, it can feel awkward and kind of bumpy. You fall off, you get mad, you apologize, you get back on. But over time, you do these practices, you're kind of riding the bike. And you have a better sense of what to do as the obstacles come your way. So that's the book. It's really about this emotional intelligence, really learning how to be with our emotions in a way that spills over for the good of others in our lives.
I love that you're challenging us to do that and at the same time be so compassionate toward ourselves, that it's both. Feels really important.
It sure does.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
So let's talk about stop numbing emotions. Sissy, talk about something your therapist once said.
So my therapist told me, my last therapist was all on the phone, and which was kind of nice. I couldn't see him when he was being really hard on me. And he told me that most of what I do in my life is brain candy. Like I'm just giving my brain candy rather than doing the hard work of coping strategies. So
I relate.
feels like numbing emotions. So will you talk about how we're doing that these days and what a better way is?
I talk in the book about my lifelong love affair with pizza. So there's no cue for that. Something's bothering me that I'm looking for the pizza. And listen again, self-compassion, right? We do need to soothe ourselves. We do need healthy escape and healthy relief. And that's the thing I always want to say to people. Oh gosh, it's not about just clamping down on yourself. It's getting curious. I wonder what I really need in this moment, right?
Yeah.
And so what I like to say is numbing is the opposite of naming.
That's
When we
so
numb, we're trying to keep our emotions out of our conscious awareness. Don't want to feel it. Just grab something that's easier. And listen, sometimes, if you're binge watching show for 6 hours after a hard day, that might be what you need. The difference between that is if you do that consistently for 3 years to avoid a hard situation versus you do it one night and then the next morning you go, okay, I got to now go back and deal with the thing I didn't want to deal with last night. That's different. So I really want to put that out there. We are not, we do need healthy forms of escape, but when we are numbing consistently, we're not naming what's true and what's hard. And naming brings the thing that's hard into our conscious awareness. Something happened that's hard. I don't want to feel this way, but I do. Because facing that feeling, naming it, is how we find our way through to a better, healthier place. Right? So numbing keeps us from naming. And again, no shame. We need to pace ourselves. And again, this comes out of that IFS model. We need healthy. There's a part of us that sometimes needs to put out the flames of painful emotions in healthy boundary lines. That's great. But when that gets extreme and we're not facing the painful emotions and facing what's hard, we deprive ourselves of healing, of nourishment, of the good things that God has for us.
Yes. And move into more addictive spaces too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So a little brain candy's okay. I can keep going with my wanting to watch Elsbeth every week these days.
I think we all need a little bit here and there, right? A little bit of self-soothing is important.
Sissy, you just got back from an amazing birthday trip. Tell folks where you went.
We went to California, and it was my Christmas present to the boys that we went to Legoland for Henry, the San Diego Zoo for Whit, and then they surprised me in the middle of all that and took me to Disneyland, which, how amazing is that?
That is one unbelievable trip. Did you have the most fun with those boys?
Oh, my stars. We made 1,000 great memories.
I loved the photos. I can't believe how much you did in a week.
We were Olympic gold medalists in the snack department to keep our energy up. And one of our sponsors helped out tremendously in that department.
Who is that?
Mosh bars. We ate them on the plane. We ate them at the zoo.
I eat them in the rain, but never in the loo.
You can tell we've been working on children's books, can't you?
Yes, you can.
Cookies and cream is one of our very favorites.
I love the banana bread one. You know what else I love? Mosh bars are not only good for you, they are doing good in the world.
I love their mission. Mosh is a company founded by Maria Shriver and her son, Patrick Schwarzenegger, with a simple mission: to create a conversation around brain health through food, education, and research. Maria's father suffered from Alzheimer's, and since then, she and Patrick have dedicated themselves to finding ways to help other families dealing with this debilitating disease.
Mosh was even featured on Shark Tank. Mosh joined forces with the world's top scientists and functional nutritionists to go beyond your average protein bar. With 6 delicious flavors, each Mosh bar has 12 grams of protein and is made with ingredients that support brain health, like ashwagandha, lion's mane, collagen, and omega-3s. Can you say ashwagandha 3 times as fast as you can?
I cannot, and I won't. But here's the best part about Mosh to make you feel good. Mosh donates a portion of all proceeds from your order to fund gender-based brain health research through the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. Why gender-based? 2/3 of all Alzheimer patients are women. Mosh is working closely to close the gap between women and men's health research.
I need to mention they also have a line of plant-based protein bars in 3 delicious flavors. As I have already confessed, I love the banana bread.
If you want to find ways to give back to others and fuel your body and your brain, Mosh bars are the perfect choice for you. Head to moshlife.com/RBG to save 20% off plus free shipping on either the Bestsellers Trial Pack or the new Plant-Based Trial Pack.
That's 20% off plus free shipping on either the bestseller or plant-based trial packs at moslife.com/RBG.
Thank you, Mosh, for sponsoring this episode. Another thing we love that you talk about are decisions that can break cycles of defeat. And David and I have talked a lot in the last couple of years that we just have never sat with as many parents who feel defeated.
Yeah.
And so we would love for you to talk about what you feel like that can look like for parents, for any of us.
Again, I always say, name what's hard, start with yourself. And I would start with the feeling, I feel defeated. I don't want to feel defeated. There's a surrender in owning what we feel that puts us in touch. This gets at that spiritual piece, puts us in touch with the living God. It's not a magical zap of the wand, when we surrender to, I feel so defeated, but there is a release in that can open up. Again, it neurobiologically, right? It's calming our nervous system. We're not amping up into that adrenalized state. I can't be defeated, right? Which is just adding more pressure. So when we surrender to that feeling of this is hard, parenting is hard right now. I can feel defeated. We're naming something true and we're bringing God into that as yeah, I get it. We're practicing that self-compassion. So that's number one. That literally calms our limbic firing, calms our nervous system. And then I would say number two is begin that framing process of, what do I need? What do I need? That's a hard question. For so many of us. Do I need to have a couple friends who walk with me and help me remind me that, yeah, it is hard. You're doing your best. Do I need a therapist? Do I need for me? Because I'm pouring out so much for my kids that I'm not doing okay. I'm sure you guys see that so often where it's like, actually, maybe the best thing you could do for your children is get some help for yourself.
Yes.
Right. And that's okay. And that's not selfish.
Right.
And then just, there's this feeling I have, I guess what I really feel right now, I want your listeners to hear is sometimes you got to let the ceiling fall and go, man, this is just where I am. And there's something about that release. I think we also are modeling for our kids because our kids are struggling. And we're kind of showing them, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I am too. It's hard. There's a lot out there right now that's hard. Come here, hold me. I want to just hold you in it, right? And we begin to model that witness, that power of that presence where we've received that sense of God's compassion and our self-compassion and the compassion of others. And we model that for our kiddos. Man, I may not have all the answers, but I'm with you in it. I'm not letting you go, right? And that's what we've learned to receive for ourselves. And that's what we're able to pour out to our kiddos. Honestly, that's what I find myself saying to folks so much right now. There's a lot of stuff out there that's really hard. The more we can just be with ourselves in a compassionate way through that, the more we actually, I think, model something beautiful for our kids.
Well, it's so much what they want anyway, is not for us to fix it or trying to have the answers, but just to be with them in it. Yeah.
Just to be with them.
Yeah.
Building on that, what would you say is some of the best parenting advice you've been given along the way?
Boy, that is coming from you guys. I have to say that's a lot from you guys for sure. Way back early on, a mentor of mine said, more is caught than taught. I'm sure you guys, that's kind of, that just stuck with me. And I think there's a lot of truth in it. Kind of to what we were just talking about. I think our kids catch what's going on. And there's probably a neurobiology to that, right? If I'm showing my daughter, this is how I say no to folks when I'm overwhelmed. This is how I get out of a toxic situation. This is how I care for myself when I'm anxious. She's going to learn so much more by watching me do that than by me lecturing her on how to do it. That's hard, but I think there's a lot of truth and wisdom in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that reminder. Well, I feel like every person who's listening is going to want to buy your books, which I'm so glad because I just think we can't have these conversations enough in this point in time. And so for anybody who wants to, who is not already following, listening, will you tell them where they can find you?
Yeah, I would love it. My new book, I Shouldn't Feel This Way. You can go to ishouldn'tfeelthisway.com. My website is dralisoncook.com. The podcast is The Best of You. I guess those are the big places. I'd love for folks to join me in any of those places.
Well, we like to end with something fun and food related. So we've got a 2-part question for you, queso or guac, and what's your favorite taco?
I love this question. Guac, for sure. 100%. My favorite taco, like in terms of what I want, like on it?
Yeah.
Or brand or anything.
It could be anything. Homemade, restaurant, what you love on it, anything's fair game.
Honestly, my favorite thing is just kind of my own homemade, a little bit of avocado, a little bit of tomato, a little bit of cheese all wrapped up. And that's probably one of my favorite all-time meals altogether. So all of it is good.
That sounds so yummy. Well, we need to get you to Nashville so we can all have tacos together. Be together.
I would
in
love
person.
that.
I would love that. Or actually, we might rather come to Wyoming or Boston. Either. We'd pick either spot.
Anytime. I think it'd be really fun to do just to gather with you guys and do some stuff together. There's so much. I love what you guys are doing. It's so important. It matters. I know there's a cost to it, right? To enter into so much of what you guys enter into. And just any way we can support each other and support those who are listening or really trying. Just right now I have this sense of it's so hard. Things are so hard and we're all in it, trying to bring good and healing and light into the world. And the more we can do it together, I'm in.
Amen. Well, you are certainly doing that. And it's a privilege to share you with our folks. Alison, thank you so much.
It's a joy to be with you.
It is.
Thank you both.
David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible.
Amanda Young, our operations manager.
Chris Starrett, our engineer and producer.
Our management team at KCH.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.